A warm welcome. Myself, Gautham K P, a class 10 student of Silver Hills Public School, KOZHIKODE. Today, I am taking salts, which is a part of the second chapter, Acids, Bases and Salts, the NCERT textbook of class 10. So, let us dive right in. So, what are salts? It is something which we have used in our day-to-day life. Salts are formed in the neutralization reaction. When an acid reacts with a base, giving salt and water, that is the neutralization reaction. For example, the reaction of HCl and NaOH. HCl reacts with the NaOH, giving NaCl and H2O. Here, as we know, NaCl is sodium chloride, which is more popularly known as common salt or table salts. So, depending on the types of acids and bases used to make a salt, the pH value of a salt differs. Potassium chloride, sodium chloride, zinc sulfate, etc. are the most important salts that we use in our day-to-day life. Since we know infinite number of salts, it is very important to classify them. So, the most common classification is depending on the pH value of a salt. So, depending on the pH value of a salt, salts can be classified into three types: neutral salts, acidic salts and basic salts. So, what a neutral salt? A neutral salt is formed when a strong acid reacts with a strong base. For example, the reaction between hydrochloric acid and sodium hydroxide, giving sodium chloride and water. Here, the H plus ions and the OH minus ions present in both acids and bases are equal, and thus the salt form is neutralized. Moving on, we have acidic salts. So, what is an acidic salt? An acidic salt is formed when a strong acid reacts with a weak base. For example, the reaction between hydrochloric acid, ammonium hydroxide, which gives ammonium chloride and water. Here, the H plus ions are greater in number than the OH minus ions, and thus the salt becomes acidic in nature. Next, we have basic salt. A basic salt is formed when a weak acid reacts with a strong base. For example, the reaction of acetic acid and sodium hydroxide, giving sodium acetate and water. Here, the H plus ions in the acid is less compared to the OH minus ions in the base. Thus, salt formed is basic in nature. Salts can be classified into different families depending on the acid or base used to make the salt. There are sodium salts and chloride salts. Sodium chloride, sodium hydroxide, etc. are sodium salts as they are formed from sodium hydroxide. And chloride salt, magnesium chloride, potassium chloride, etc. are chloride salt as they are formed from hydrochloric acid. So, now let us move on to some of the most important salts that we are discussing in this chapter. They are namely sodium hydroxide, baking soda, washing soda and bleaching powder. Now, let us move on to electrolysis of brine or aqueous NaCl. So, what is brine? Brine is a concentrated solution of NaCl. Here, when brine is electrolyzed, it decomposes forming chlorine, hydrogen and sodium hydroxide. Here, since hydrogen ion is positive, it moves towards the cathode, and since the chlorine ion is negative, it goes towards the anode, and the hydrogen gas is released at the cathode and the chlorine gas is released at the anode, and we get sodium hydroxide with NaCl in it as the end product. Now, we have bleaching powder. Bleaching powder is a calcium salt. As you can see, the chlorine which is evolved from the electrolysis of brine, it is made to react with dry slaked lime, giving calcium oxychloride plus water. This process is called Hazen-Claver's process. Now, the uses of bleaching powder. Bleaching powder is used for bleaching cotton and linen in the textile industry. It is also used for purification of water. Also, it's an important oxidizing agent in many chemical industries. Moving on, we have baking soda. Baking soda is a sodium salt. The process by which baking soda is produced is called Solvay's process. Baking soda is produced when ammoniacal brine reacts with CO2. So, what is ammoniacal brine? Brine, as you know, is a concentrated solution of NaCl. When the brine is saturated with ammonia, it gives ammoniacal brine. So, as you can see, sodium chloride, ammonia and water plus carbon dioxide reacts to give sodium hydrogen carbonate and ammonium chloride. Baking soda is a non-corrosive basic salt. Now, the uses of baking soda. Baking soda, when under extreme heat and pressure, it goes under thermal decomposition, giving sodium carbonate, carbon dioxide and water. Here, carbon dioxide is the main reason why the cakes and breads, when we bake them, are fluffy in nature. For making baking powder, a mild edible acid is added to baking soda. Thus, it gives baking powder. Baking soda is also used as an antacid. It's also used in soda acid fire extinguishers. Now, we have washing soda. Washing soda is a sodium salt. It is formed when the recrystallization of sodium carbonate happens, and it's a basic salt in nature. As you can see, sodium carbonate reacts with 10H2O, and under recrystallization it gives Na2CO3 and 10H2O. And now the uses of washing soda. It is used for chemical industries, and it's also used in the manufacturing of glass, soap and paper. It is also used in the manufacturing of borax, and it's very commonly used for removing the permanent hardness of water. I hope you've understood this topic of salts with me. Thank you.